District 6 supervisor. I would be honored to be your supervisor for the next 4 years. I've lived and worked in this district for over 25 years. As a working artist with a small business, I understand the needs of the small business and the challenges that small business has to operate and expand. To the question of what specifics, I'll answer that in a second. But I also have been on the Building Inspection Commission for the good part of the last decade, serving as the tenant representative, working on issues that I've heard everybody up here talking about: the quality of life in the SROs, the quality of life in the apartment houses, the availability of affordable housing to a pretty large, broad specter of folks who live and work in this district. We have actually institutionalized programs like the SRO Collaborative, which people have referred to, and the COP, the Code Enforcement Outreach Program, which provides similar services to apartment houses. The goal of these programs is to provide tenant advocacy in these buildings so that the tenants who are experiencing livability issues in SROs and apartment houses have an avenue into our system, and to demand that the city actually take efforts. I also sit on the litigation committee at the Building Commission. In that capacity, we have forwarded legal action against what I call bad actors in the landlord business, the Moshers, even the Academy of Art. We've actually filed actions against because they are routinely evicting tenants under the guise of doing upgrades, emptying buildings out, doing upgrades without permits, and then re-renting it to folks at probably 10 times the rent who are students at the Academy of Art University. One of the things I'd like to start the discussion about, and I have actually put questions into the city attorney's office, is it possible that we can actually charge fees to for-profit enterprises like the Academy of Art when they have students? We could charge a per-student fee for these, because they are a for-profit, they are not a nonprofit. They actually have done all of the expansion they've done without an institutional plan, putting them at an advantage over other small businesses and the other schools that are nonprofit who have to go through the same process. The result is they have buses that are larger than our lanes. We don't know what their shuttle system is because we've never had to evaluate it against any kind of institutional plan. The wholesale displacement of tenants and the emptying out of tenant buildings, which means there's less housing available for the exact things that Mr. Keyes and other folks that are running this district talked about. You know, we all have really good ideas. We all can stand up and say we need more housing, and I'm committed to that. But what I've actually done over the past few years is work to have housing bonds passed, work to put things on the ballot like what's on in November in Prop A, which is providing money in the form of grants and deferred loans to affordable housing projects and SROs to seismically strengthen them so they don't collapse when the earthquake happens. If we don't do it, and if we don't do it to the expanded universe of rent-controlled buildings, we, in the anticipated earthquake, will lose all of this housing stock, and that's tens of thousands of units that we could lose overnight. And what goes up in their place is not rent control. So we have a bond measure of about $60 million that's aimed specifically at the lowest cost housing in the city. We also have some other programs to actually deal with market rate soft story wood frame buildings. The best way to provide housing is to save what's here, to make sure it doesn't collapse, and to actually do things like adaptively reuse some of these empty commercial buildings. If we don't have to build the shell, it's a cheaper way of creating housing. So I've been forwarding a task force to actually look at how to adaptively reuse some of the commercial buildings for shelters, for transitional housing, to actually provide the wraparound services within the units to teach people how to stay housed and become employed. Those are the kind of things that will get folks from the SROs into apartment houses, providing the kind of jobs that we are already doing in the Tenderloin, which is through some arts uses, trying to strengthen the theater district. I've talked to many producers who actually have theater productions that they would bring here if there was more rehearsal space, if there was more workforce that actually was trained in things like stage design and light design, the things that we actually have a lot of people here who can do it, especially in the Tenderloin. I recently opened my headquarters on Market Street, and have had the amazing experience of having artists in the neighborhood come in and put art in the storefront, musicians who actually, we've arranged for some musical equipment, who actually are out in front really playing amazing, bringing people in, community people congregating. The exact thing that you need to actually create positive traffic on the streets. I know at Bodecker Park, Betty Traynor has an amazing program of bringing artists into the park, and the effect that it has on the community of bringing folks in and actually experiencing community, not being arrested for being on the streets, but actually able to dance on the streets. I mean, imagine that in this city. So these are the things that I've actually been working on. I'm talking with folks who, some of the vendors on the streets who cook tamales, who have carts, they need places to cook. And so we're talking about recreating like a La Cocina in the Tenderloin for the folks who have small businesses to be able to expand, maybe hire people, but also for the families who are now living in the Tenderloin, who live in SROs and have no place to cook for their families. These are the kind of solutions that we need to be able to use community spaces, to be able to make the most out of the least so that we stop increasing our carbon footprint as a city. We need to keep our businesses here. We need to continue to do things like encourage industrial businesses. We don't have any policies, and didn't have any policies until last year, to have the Mayor's Office of Workforce Development support industrial businesses. We have industrial businesses here that stay here to a certain point where they're just ready to hire more people, and then they go, not offshore necessarily, but certainly to the East Bay and Fresno. We need to keep those here because that's how we get our revenue, from businesses who, you know, all together contribute to making sure that we have the money we need to provide the services that help the city stay the world-class city it is for all of us. So, you know, I've been here for 25 years. I know how to deal with conflicts between uses. It's the biggest, it's the district that has the most mixed uses of any others, right up next to each other. The most nonprofits, the most small businesses, the most tenants in poverty. These are challenges that I've been working on for 2 decades. I look forward to continuing that work in City Hall, and I've been honored to have Central City Dem support for my Democratic County Central Committee races. I would be honored to have your support for this. So, Debra Walker for Supervisor, thank you.